Difficulty focusing, procrastination, distraction, struggling with overwhelm, exhaustion, burnout, constant urgency, and rushing, doubting your abilities to reach your goals. Our next guest is here to share his perspectives on ending mental clutter and procrastination naturally. Hi, and welcome to the U World Order Showcase podcast, where we feature life health transformational coaches and spiritual entrepreneurs being the change they seek in the world. I'm your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist, on a mission to help coaches and entrepreneurs amplify their voice, monetize their mission, and get visible, leveraging podcasts and the huge audience we have over on the Gnostic TV network. Today, we are chatting with Anthony Palacin. Anthony is a mental health engineer, having recovered from his own bipolar diagnosis and quit medicating himself naturally. He teaches focus and mental health awareness. Welcome to the show, Anthony. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. So, are you ready for the big question?
Shoot my way.
Okay. What's the most significant thing, in your opinion, as individuals we can do to make an impact on how the world is going?
I think one of the biggest things we can do is grow our self-compassion and our compassion for others. Because at the end of the day, everything that happens for valid reasons. And get curious about what those reasons are. It'll lead to the most amazing insights. And when we grow that for ourselves, when we grow it for others, then we'll just make the world a better place.
Oh, I love that answer. So your main focus is on helping people rediscover themselves. Is that a fair assessment?
So many different things. um Rediscovering themselves, or the way that they approach their work or their work life balance. And as a part of that, it's training people to become as effective as possible in terms of their productivity, their focus, their energy levels, all of that going hand in hand with physical and mental well-being. So it's really a holistic transformation.
So you mainly work with people who struggle with focus and attention, and sometimes we call it ADHD, but you're not diagnosing anybody or treating any illness. But that's the label that we tend to put on people who struggle with, in these areas. Is that a fair assessment?
It's a fair assessment, and one of the things that is just a symptom of this 21st century world that we've created is the amount of technology has increased exponentially, which means that the amount of stuff that we have to pay attention to think of, to keep track, to reply to, all of this is just exponentially more than what our brains were designed to handle. We still have medieval brains, we still have ancestral brains, but we're operating in a world that is just way more demands than what it can handle. So it's leading people, even if they don't have ADHD, to have ADHD like symptoms. In some of my training as a coach, they called it attention deficit trait. It doesn't mean you have ADHD. It's just you struggle with attention because the world is designed that way. You are living in a world that is pulling your attention everywhere, and this is a battle that we have to fight. We have to adapt to this new world that we are creating.
So, what are some symptoms of somebody that might be struggling with attention deficit symptoms? I mean, we say these terms, but they have meanings, and how do you define them?
It tends to be quite creative people, smart people who have a lot of ideas. There's a lot going on in their head, and they're constantly jumping from one thing to another. Sometimes it leads to procrastination, sometimes it leads to difficulty focusing, but it's it can, and there's also a hyperactivity piece that can be in there that may or may not. The the tricky thing with ADHD is it's such a wide variety of symptoms because there's attention, there's hyperactivity, and there's impulsivity. And on top of all of those things, which are more behavioral, then there are emotional aspects like irritability or being very sensitive to rejection. There might be sensory aspects, being very sensitive to different stimulation, whether it's noise, whether it's lights, whether it is textures or flavors, things like that. Um, yeah, that kind of. And one more thing that I think is really, really characteristic, ADHDers tend to only want to do what they really like to do and what they're really passionate about doing, what they really enjoy doing. So when I was in high school, I was the biggest procrastinator in the world. I would stay up all night playing either video games or online poker because I didn't know it at the time, but I was just seeking that dopamine. I was seeking that flow states, and school, it's whatever. I'll do it at the very last minute of the deadline because that is also something that's gonna raise your dopamine level dramatically. You need that as an ADHDer, you almost need that high pressure in order to do something that you don't want to do. So that's another characteristics that I would say.
Hmm. So talk a little bit about the flow state uh, when people get into it and why it's so important with people who are struggling in other areas of their lives to to be able to understand what it is and how to maybe use it in other areas of their lives.
Yeah. So I want the person who's listening to think back to their childhood or some kind of work activity that they felt so immersed in that time would pass by without knowing how much. You could spend 3, 4 hours doing that activity fully focused, feeling like you lose your sense of self, your sense of time. The activity itself feels effortless. When you come out of that activity, you go, whoa, did I spend 3 hours or 4 hours doing that? That's a flow state. And what's amazing is, as of the last 50 years or so, we have now neuroscience cutting edge research that is helping us understand the mechanics of getting into this state of consciousness, not only for activities that we naturally get into a flow state for, but also for other types of activities using different techniques.
Oh, that's really fascinating. What kind of techniques are those?
So some of it is related to the activities themselves. If they
Hmm.
are activities that are really interesting to us, that we're passionate about, that we have a strong sense of purpose, and those activities relate to our purpose,
Hmm.
that tends to be a high flow trigger. But other than that, there are some mindset kind of ways of looking at it, some belief ways of looking at it, some spiritual ways of looking at getting into a flow state, and the core of what I teach is productivity neuroscience related. So it's about understanding that there's a cycle of flow. We're not in flow all the time, and the goal is not to be in flow all the time. There are things that trigger flow. For example, novelty, risk, uncertainty. This is where the dopamine of procrastination comes in. And there are other things that are blockers to flow. So things like having fixed mindsets, things like distractions, interruptions, all sorts of things. So it's minimizing the blockers, it's understanding the cycle, it's mapping your day in a way that is flow aligned and using the productivity techniques to get into flow when you need to and to also recover your brain mentally in order to get back into a state of full focus as quickly as possible. So all of this combined.
Interesting. You were talking about the dopamine of procrastination. I don't think I've ever considered that. It's really interesting to me because just the act of not of putting something off also triggers the idea that you're going to get a rush at some point. There's
Absolutely. So there's
there's
that psychological idea. And in flow, one of the most potent flow triggers is something called the challenge to skill ratio. So
Mhm,
that it's basically the balance between the challenge that you have, so the task that
mhm,
you need to accomplish, and your level of skill. So procrastination lives in the area where either you're too skilled for the task and you're kind of bored by it,
mhm.
or you're too unskilled relative to the task and you're feeling overwhelmed. So where you are actually productive and in a flow state is when there is a good match between the level of challenge and your skill. So, one of the things that procrastination does that people are not aware of is as the time that you have left to do the task decreases, the amount of risk and the amount of pressure increases, which makes the challenge higher. So you have less time to accomplish the same task. That means the challenge to skill ratio is becoming tuned to fire up that dopamine. And that's where we get that last minute rush of motivation. Or if it's for big pieces of work, I remember in high school, I would always leave essays till the last day, and I would stay up all night doing an essay because I just couldn't even start. I was too bored about the topic that I didn't want to start.
Oh, it's so fascinating. I know people on the other end of that spectrum that, they never put anything off. They get all the bad stuff done first, and then they go and do the things that they want to do. Just a different, it's just different way of wiring in your head. Like it, it's really fascinating.
It absolutely is, yeah. And the way I teach productivity is there are no fixed techniques, there's no right or wrong way, but there are principles to follow that are
Mhm.
more or less biologically aligned. So there is always a trade-off to something. If you procrastinate a lot, the upside is you've had a lot of time to think about the thing in the background. Whereas if you get the task done right away and submit it and close it and call it a day, you might be missing out on some precious time that your subconscious can work on that task. So there really is a trade-off, and the whole philosophy behind flow as I teach it is to find that sweet spot in the middle ground that works for you and applies to each specific task and is in alignment with your values and your lifestyle goals while still increasing your efficiency overall and your ability to focus.
I love that. That's really fascinating. I've never thought about it in these terms before. And And then it's not just like it's not a thought process, it's your whole body process. When you start talking about dopamine, that's chemical. It's released into your body. Your body chemistry changes when you're in these situations. And same with the flow state. I'm pretty sure that there's some chemical that's released that causes you to be able to focus so intently that you lose track of any of the distractions around you. You're just in this space. It's like your own little bubble where you can just do whatever the thing is you're doing, and it's like you're channeling almost.
There's a lot of similarities between the flow state and spiritual and mystical experiences. And in terms of neurochemistry, flow actually releases a cocktail of positive neurochemicals. We can get into that if we want, but
Mhm.
it might be a little overwhelming. The point is, it's basically your body's natural internal pharmacy that the most positive cocktail of neurochemicals you can get is from flow and the recovery period after flow, when you kind of go back into self-care to rejuvenate, replenish your brain's chemistry.
So what are those chemicals? Do you know offhand?
Yeah, so a lot of flow is about understanding the flow cycle.
Hmm.
In the flow state itself, it's driven by dopamine. So it starts with dopamine, but it
Hmm.
also releases anandamide and oh gosh, there's another one that slips my mind, so I don't want to wait. uh, but quite
Pitocin,
oxytocin is
oxytocin.
coming after the flow states.
Okay.
So norepinephrine comes in the struggle phase, the kind of learning, actively paying attention phase,
Mhm.
dopamine in the flow state. In between the two, there's a release phase where your brain releases nitric oxide. And this is kind of similar to starting a meditation
Mhm.
when your brain is in more relaxed brain waves.
Mhm.
Um, and then flow is dopamine, anandamide, oh gosh, it slips my mind. Apologies.
You're good. You're good. That's so fascinating. And it's
But
so
yeah.
interesting how our bodies are driven by so many different chemicals that happen based on thoughts that we're having. You know,
Hmm.
thoughts drive our chemicals, and then our chemicals cause our bodies to be a certain way. And if you're all tense, you're not going to be able to be in the flow state because you have a different set of chemicals going through your body, and your body wants to do something different. And no amount of telling yourself you're going to do it is going to change it.
Exactly. So one of the things that is great about looking at inner work and healing through the lens of productivity is
Mhm.
we can say that any symptom that we're looking at, for example, procrastination or difficulty focusing,
Mhm.
is going to be due to a mix of a certain amount of skills that can be trained just through learning, education, and practice.
Mhm.
And the other piece is the unconscious material. So, this is where the fears live. This is where I'm not good enough lives. This is where perfection lives, all of these things. And you can't really know the balance between lack of skills versus the inner deep stuff until you've trained the skills, or at least you have an idea of what skills are trainable and how much you can train them, so that you can then understand, okay, now when I look at procrastination after I've trained flow, I notice that I only procrastinate on my taxes, or I only procrastinate when it has to do with an emotional topic. And that gives you huge insights for your life, for your healing journey as well.
Yeah, information is always so helpful in trying to cultivate a life that you enjoy living. So, how do you help people? Is it one-on-one? Is it groups? How does all that look?
It's one-on-one at the moment. There's also an online course which is available, and yeah, that's those are the two ways. I have a weekly email as well.
Okay. And you offer the top 21 actionable insights from Flow. It's a PDF. You want to talk a little bit about that, how that would help people?
That's correct. So a lot of mainstream productivity is all about forcing yourself with discipline, with willpower, or it's about prescribing fixed techniques like wake up at 5 a.m. or start with your hardest task, this kind of thing. The insights from flow neuroscience are really about realigning your productivity with your body. And it's not about prescribing specific techniques, but it's about learning principles like the fact that there are biorhythms and how often you should take a mental break. What does a good mental break look like? A lot of people, between a couple of tasks, if they have 5 minutes, they're going to check their emails, they're going to respond to texts, and to a certain degree there's validity in that. But from a brain performance perspective, you're shooting yourself in the foot because you're going from a cognitive task to another cognitive little break to another cognitive task, and you're just running on adrenaline, basically cortisol. You're not giving yourself the mental recovery to be more efficient. So then what happens after 90 minutes, 2 hours, 2.5 hours? You start losing efficiency, you start getting distracted, you start looking a little bit all over the place, and you just waste time and energy. Those texts could have waited, or those emails or that social media could have waited. And it's really about sharing the niche knowledge that isn't really known yet, because the science of flow is so new. It's really something from the last few decades that we've just been uncovering, and it's really necessary in the 21st century.
Yeah, people used to do that naturally. They were called rhythms in those days, where you got in the rhythm and you did things and different. You weren't always doing the same thing every day because you had seasons. And a season required certain kinds of work, and then it changed over the season and day to day as the seasons progress. And moon cycles are like that too. For women especially, but for all of us as human beings, we experience different shifts as the moon sh cycles shift, and things are better done at certain points in the cycles rather than trying to just think we're going to do the same thing every single day, every day of our lives, and we're going to be really good at it, and that never works.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and it depends on what part of the world you're in, but of
Mhm.
course, navigating life seasonally and navigating your daily flow based on the sun. This is something we spend so much time indoors. We spend so much time sitting down. The human being as a biological entity is so disconnected in the 21st century from its biological roots that this isn't just leading to focus and productivity problems, it's leading to mental illness in parts. Is definitely a contributing factor.
I wonder with little kids how much of an impact this is having because as adults or like different generations mature and they start having children of their own and then they start passing on either through DNA or just through behavioral expectations. They're just the change is happening so quickly that it's hard for little kids to really figure out how they fit in, especially when they've got school and it's so important that they have 9 million hours of education during the day when really kids are designed to be outside playing. You can learn everything you need to know in 3 years.
Exactly.
I've proven it
Yeah.
with three different children. So I know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about here.
Yeah,
And
and it's so hard because the world that we're living in is so stressful. On one hand, we all need our stress relievers,
Mhm.
whether that's a glass of alcohol or whether that's a show on Netflix or playing a game on a smartphone. And especially, I have a lot of compassion for parents. Kids are seeing other kids with smartphones, and it's having this effect of, you don't want your kid to be the one that doesn't have one, or doesn't fit in because they're not like the others, but at the same time being like the others is
a huge part of the
toxic to
problem.
the, yeah, it's part of the problem. It's toxic to the brain. It's just so hard to go against the grain of society. Really, what is needed are paradigm shifts in consciousness.
Mhm.
And that's part of the reason that I'm sharing about flow. It's one little piece of the puzzle, of doing the best that you can in a world that's difficult to keep up with and stressful. Just already maximize the skills based on the principles to be in alignment with your body as much as possible.
Yeah, I love that. So how can people get to work with you?
So you can connect with me through my websites, and by um, by going there, you can find the top 21 actionable insights from Flow PDF. It's really a comprehensive overview. I guarantee that whether you're a busy mom or an entrepreneur making 6 or 7 figures, there will be one or two insights at the very least that you haven't come across before, just based on the fact that flow is a new neuroscience. And so that's one way. You can also connect with me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Feel free to send a message, comment on some posts. I'm here to talk with people. I'm here to serve.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Benny.
Thank you so much for having me.
To learn more about Anthony and to find the top 21 actionable insights from Flow, which is a PDF, you can find that over on www.palacin.co.uk. And I'll be sure and put that link in the show notes below. Thank you for tuning in with us today. If you have a podcast or you're interested in starting one, to get your message in front of our huge and active audience, be sure to reach out to us at jill@gnostictv.com. We love to help spiritual entrepreneurs and coaches amplify their voice and monetize their mission and offer a variety of ways to do this on the Gnostic TV network platform. Join us for our next episode as we share what others are doing to raise the global frequency. And remember, change begins with you. You have all the power to change the world. Start today and get visible.